right. Well, welcome to another episode of Click Happens. My name is Doug Kreitzberg with SeedPod Cyber. I'm joined, as always, by Kyle Sadi, who heads up underwriting for SeedPod, and Sinclair, who manages all our MSP relationships. That's managed service providers, for those of you who may not know what MSP stands for. Sinclair, Kyle, how are you guys doing?
Good. Halloween's over, off to Thanksgiving, right?
Halloween is over. The sugar rush. You guys are, off the sugar rush a little bit.
We've had a Butterfinger before this. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah. What is your favorite candy? What is that?
Sinclair, you go first. I'm going to save mine.
I'm a Reese's girl. Through
Reese's.
and through.
Yeah. That's a good one. Oh, you got two Reese's. So
I went grocery shopping this weekend and was the person that still bought Halloween candy after Halloween because they had Reese's on sale.
Well, there you go.
It's the best time to buy.
Mm-hmm. It is. I'm a Kit Kat guy, I have to say. The Kit Kat, just like opening. It's kind of a, it's like the Japanese tea ceremony for someone like myself. I make it a process of opening each one, and you have to eat it a certain way.
So you don't even like eating it; you just like doing the break, like a wish.
It's all about the break. It's all about trying to separate the wafers. It kind of tells you what my life is like. But in any event, we're off of the Halloween, but we're not off of cloud disturbances in the cloud. Last week we were upset because we couldn't get our Starbucks because of AWS. Others couldn't get their McDonald's apparently. And this week there were disturbances within the Microsoft cloud. I think it was one of those things where you didn't hear a lot about it. At least I didn't, other than there was outages there. And, but it was, there was a few hours where there were things that were a little clunky and you weren't sure what was going on. Kyle, Sinclair, did you have any kind of, issues with when Microsoft went down, or did you even know it went down?
I wasn't actually aware of it. So I would say it felt like it was on a smaller scale. I was actually, though, just on, if we're going to talk about this topic, coming back to Amazon, I saw an article this weekend that hit on, there's a firm called CyberCube, which I think you guys are familiar with, but they do a lot of data analysis. And again, for anyone watching, cyber is fairly new. The market's only 20, 25 years old. So grasping around data modeling and that is really important. And CyberCube put out an article. They were estimating, I think it was around 50 million to maybe 400 million, 450 million. They thought the loss from Amazon would be. It's a pretty big range. And, why is that? I think it's really hard to calculate or estimate. I think there's also things when you have business interruption, trying to understand, was there really revenue loss long-term, or was it just kind of pushed down the road? Maybe the revenue wasn't received that day, but maybe the client came back a few days later. So it's difficult, but that's sizable. That's obviously a type of loss that would be across many different types of businesses and clients across not only the US, but the world.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Sinclair, did you have any, were you aware of the cloud being down or any issues?
No, not firsthand. I thought it was interesting, though, that it was due to DNS issues, which was the same root cause for the AWS outage that we saw last week. So kind of interesting, but I didn't personally see anything, no.
Right. It again, it just kind of emphasizes the connected nature that we have, and that how susceptible we are to the large hyperscalers, as they call them, Amazon and Microsoft, and then you have Google, and then to a lesser extent, perhaps some would put Oracle up there. But and I don't see that as going away necessarily here. And for those, if you're a smaller organization, you're probably just going to deal with it, right? I mean, if your system goes down due to Microsoft or due to AWS that you have your site on, you're hoping that they got the resources to get back up and running pretty quickly. For if you're larger, though, you have to think about, how do I load balance my cloud activity? How can I have failover provisions that get me, if one goes down, I can easily transition to the other, and that's where I think from a risk mitigation standpoint, the businesses really need to start thinking about here.
Can I ask a question kind
Sure.
of related to this? I've worked with a few clients recently who've kind of brought up the waiting period that we often see on business interruption coverage. And I was kind of curious. I know in cases like this, we've already talked about on previous episodes that system deficiency business interruption is kind of what would kick in, say if AWS was out for longer than they were. But say they were, how would you go about picking the waiting period? Is there any method to selecting that?
Kyle, how would you respond?
Yeah, and good question. So you mean that from like an insurance carrier perspective, like which one?
From an applicant.
Yeah. So I'll kind of answer again what carriers kind of do and what they're looking for. So back in the day, it used to actually be standard more of like 24 hours. I think the market brought it down to kind of a standard of 12 hours. And now I am seeing a lot of 10 or 8 hours. Very rarely you'll see a carrier put out 0 hours, which is a little crazy to me because then you'd be picking up basically any outage. But then I don't think a client's enough realize that kind of outage. And it goes back to what Doug was starting to say around having really good business continuity plans. Knowing that, where your insurance kicks in with the waiting hour period. Obviously, a client would want a lower waiting hour period on their insurance, and that's more beneficial to them. But it's almost sitting down and doing the math and saying, okay, we can negotiate and get you 12, 10, or 8 hours on your insurance policy. Let's pick 10 hours. What does that look like for you if you do have an outage? Do you have that secondary backup that you can switch to and reduce it if you are on the hook for the first 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever it is? What does that look like on your balance sheet? So I think it's a really good question for clients to think about. I would think most clients just want to ask on the insurance side for a lower one, but I think they need to be filling in the gap of, okay, I know my insurance solution comes in for the larger loss. What do we look like for that earlier loss?
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. I was just wondering what the thought process behind choosing that would be.
I think from a client standpoint, it does involve, I would just add, doing a kind of a risk assessment and what's the impact to my business of us being down a half a day or 8 hours or even an hour if depending upon the if you're a hospital, obviously you need to be thinking about those things, right? For those, and again, insurance will help. So you have to figure it from a balance sheet side, and that's the insurance end. So what's my lost profits? What's my lost revenue? What extra expenses am I going to incur over that period of time? And is this something that I have the reserves to pay or the ability to pay or defer, right? Or not? And so that's going to come into the criteria. The other, though, is it's not enough for me to get a check from the insurance carrier, and this is I think what Kyle was speaking to. I need to be running. I need to be up. I got business. I got clients. I got patients that are responsible for me, and the traditional business resilience is around, do I have the backups in place, which is obviously you need to have, and how long will it take me to get back up and running if I need to access the backups. But the other is if there's an event, a cloud event, and modeling what that impact would be and how can I respond and keep running even if an AWS goes down and I'm largely dependent upon that. That I think is really for organizations to really be thinking about. I think by and large, for most smaller businesses, the dollar amount may not be enough to offset the additional cost of looking at the impact may not be if you're looking at going from a 10-hour to a 12-hour to an 8-hour, maybe if you can find an 8-hour waiting period for business interruption, you can certainly try to get it there. Your impact probably isn't going to change that much between 8 and 12 hours, maybe here, but certainly looking at how quickly can I get up and stay up if that's a critical factor for me is a big deal there.
Doug, you brought up a really good point too, which we didn't really hit on, which is like reputation and brand.
Right.
So again, there is the lost revenue early days, but if you're known from your clients as being out and not an option, that's not good for you long term. Did either of you ever see the movie Social Network, the Facebook movie?
Yep.
There's a scene that I'm connecting here where Eduardo pulls the funding and they shut down for a little bit, and Mark Zuckerberg's on the phone. He's like, "We're Facebook. We never shut down. Like we never do." And it's like the same concept.
Right. I know exactly. You have to make sure that you've got those have those contingencies in place there. The other, and just speaking of the cloud, or at least one of the cloud, Amazon, they've announced layoffs. This is not unique to Amazon. It just happened to be a noticeable, I think, 15,000 layoffs they announced last week. And this was on the heels of the CEO talking about potential layoffs and disruptions due to AI primarily. And there was talks of robots taking over the Amazon and world and there. And without getting into necessarily all the implications or what we think the implications are from AI and job creation or job loss, what impact do we see that having from a cybersecurity standpoint or cyber insurance? Or is there really no impact to that going forward?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that one. And this interesting, I think, connects to last week. There was Xywave, which is another one of the cyber conferences, very good cyber conference. And there were some topics that were hit on there that I feel like ties to this. So as you said, Doug, we're not going to sit here and debate, long term what AI will do for jobs and good or bad. My personal opinion on that is that jobs that are lost today there'll be other opportunities. I know here at SeedPod, we use AI technology in many different ways, and there's some amazing things that we can do more efficiently and quickly, but you still need people driving the decision-making and the critiques, and that it just makes us, a little bit more efficient and faster. But when I think about AI, and again, separate from we know threat actors are using AI to launch more attacks, there's a high percentage use of AI. I think when you look at efficiencies of the business and how trading happens, there's big opportunity there. One of the Xywave conference topics were discussions and complaints around the claims process, which if you've ever either been a part of a claim or seen behind the scenes, there's so much to it. It's so complex, and there's a lot of people involved and a lot of paperwork. So again, how can you make that process even more efficient for everyone involved? And then underwriting, it's something that we talk a lot about here at SeedPod. A big thing with us is our use of AI with the insurability audit and what's coming with some of our embedded solutions, where again, we want to remove that inefficiencies of the sending an application and someone emailing us back and they're like, we can't print it, or we have to complete it online. And how do we do that? And all of that, we're trying to get past that and really understand controls up front without a physical application. So yeah, I think AI is going to continue to play a huge piece in the future, and really just making the product easier for clients to obtain.
What do you think, Sinclair?
Oh, AI. Yeah, I mean, I think there's clearly still a need for human touch. We need to be checking what AI is doing, but I mean, obviously, AI is driving efficiency. It's also kind of redefining where risk lives. And I think like to see a giant like AWS increasing their use of AI, I think underwriting frameworks are going to have to evolve too. So we're not going to have to be looking at certain controls like we have been. We're going to have to start looking more at governance for the use of AI. It's just kind of expanding the whole network of risk. I feel like I don't even know if that makes sense, but
Right.
it's
Right.
scary.
Yeah, it will definitely redefine that. I think governance is something that organizations still, I mean, you could argue that governance is still relatively immature in cybersecurity overall. With regards to, and if you think long term, if a business isn't, there's two things. One is, ironically, a positive thing is if you have fewer people in your organization doing the same things, that reduces the human risk component, right? Because we talk a lot about and we'll probably talk more about this in a moment, clicking links and entering in credentials. Well, you won't have as many people doing that, right? Because they won't be in the organization. At the same time, you'll have a lot of these AI agents that right now nobody's really paying attention to the security of how they're being built, running around. And so that's going to increase. So maybe the human risk component will move to, or be similar to on the agenic. They'll just call it agenic risk, and some of it will be AI, some of it will be human, and that's just all part of it there. But I also think that it's going to create, you're just going to see a lot of smaller business out there too. I mean, it's a great, again, I don't want to get too far on where AI can take us, but I would be more on the abundance side. I think it's creating a lot of opportunities for people to do, and, people who dream and want to do things, they'll have access to tools and resources to do them that, larger companies, you needed to be a larger company to do in the future. So, but that means a lot more smaller businesses in which, you need to focus on how to manage their balance sheets and how do they manage their resilience. And it gets back to the fact that cyber insurance is still underpenetrated in that small business space. And we have to figure out how to get there and reach out to them. And it's only going to get bigger, I think. There. At the same time, there's the oldie but goodie stuff that still happens. Bad guys are still out to take our money and figuring out all the ways that they can do it. I'm sure AI is involved in a lot of it. But Sinclair, you had an example of talking to one of our MSP partners of an issue they had. I don't know if it was a couple years ago, but relating to wire fraud or business email compromise. Could you kind of touch on that?
Yeah, still learning the details, working with this client, but it's just always crazy when you work in cyber insurance. Usually you're speaking with businesses who maybe had an incident and had the insurance in place. And in this case, it was back in 2023, a manufacturer, they did not have cyber insurance, and one of their employees got tricked into wiring funds, but that wasn't even really the majority of the loss that was incurred was the actual wire. It was the response, and notifying impacted parties and getting forensics and accounting involved that drove up the loss to $1 million. Around about $1 million.
$1 million. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're still digging into the details, but it's always just crazy to hear those stories of, this is what insurance is for, these catastrophic incidents that you just never saw coming.
Right. And they didn't have the insurance, and they, well, it's fortunate that they're still around to tell you about it.
Mm.
There with regard
Fortunate but
to it.
shocking.
Yeah,
A lot
yeah.
of, yeah.
And we don't talk a lot about or maybe those who focus on cyber insurance talk a lot about ransomware, probably more so than business email compromise. But Kyle, business email compromise, that's a big, and wire fraud, these are big dollars, right?
Yeah, a couple things. That was an interesting story that Sinclair just shared. I randomly saw on LinkedIn somebody had posted a story just this weekend of a client who had like a $75,000 wire fraudulent wire transfer, and the client thought that they would get some coverage under like a $25,000. It was either like a BOP or GL, and the person that posted it, I guess, knew the client and was just like, that's not going to cover that, and this is why. And they're freaking out because they'll be in business, I think, but they are a very small business, and $75,000 is a big deal. So it's scary. I personally am a very paranoid person, being in this industry for so long. I just received a breach notice about myself last week, and it was from a company that works with the company I used to work with. Seemed very legit, and I personally freeze my credit, so there shouldn't really be an issue. But it gave me like contact information for credit monitoring. I went on and it wanted my social security, and I was like, no. I was like, it's 85, 90% chance this is an accurate letter. I'm like, no, I'm not putting my social security in here. Like, I'm
Right.
way too paranoid. But anyways, business email compromise, I think that's something that's not talked about enough. And that is one of the it's probably one of the number one or two trending events that happen, and costs associated with it, which can be really expensive. It's gotten better over the years, but there is a manual type of process that occurs, which now firms are using technology solutions where they'll have to go through inboxes of data to check for confidential information. And I mean, I was just looking the other day, I think I sent 85 emails on Friday. Like, that's one person. Think of if you're kind of you have multiple people in the organization, and you're putting that over months or even a year, it can be really expensive. So yeah, business email compromise. And the number one, I'm sure you guys can guess this, but the number one control that's lacking typically when there's a business email compromise, what do you guys think?
The number one control that's lacking,
Yeah, when someone has a PNC.
well, there'd be MFA or
Usually it's usually it's the the easy one, the MFA. It's just not in place, and it leads to it, so it can be frustrating.
Yeah. So an MFA, for those of you who may not know, is multi-factor authentication. Basically when you have to, you key in a password and then you have to use, your phone to validate it or some other device there. Yeah, I don't know why. For those of us, I guess, in the business, we're so used to needing it or knowing that it should be there. And I don't know why the software providers, quite frankly, don't just enforce it from the beginning. Why are we even letting anyone, make a decision on that? We don't buy a car and then have the option of whether we want seatbelts there. But in any event, I don't want to be ranting on that, but it is it is a tough place, and one of the things that we perhaps don't talk enough about the cyber insurance is it's one thing to get, you have the dollars coverage, but especially with business email compromise, it's more important to have access to people and resources that know what to do, because you can get most of your money back if you have the right setup in place, and having the right forensics to deal with that specific, it's a specialist type case within incident response. And if you're not insured, you're not going to have those resources, right? You're going to call your attorney who's down the street, and he's just closing on a house, and that's what he does. He does this wills, he does house sales, he'll do a few business stuff, transactions, and he won't know anything about this. The local IT guy won't be able to help. The bankers, will try to help, but they're limited. And FBI would only come in maybe in certain size cases unless you got a good relationship with them. So, just having the insurance for that alone is kind of almost worth the premium.
That's that point, and even to just go a little bit further, making sure you're with the right firm, because I have seen cases where firms are maybe starting up like a service to handle BECs, but they're just new to it, and they're charging 5-6 times the amount for casework when you have a firm that has been doing it for years, and they have it down to a very good rate. And I've seen that situation where clients have maybe gone with the wrong firm and then gotten the right firms involved, and it's a massive savings.
Yeah, absolutely. There. We've talked about taking, the bad guys taking stuff. Let's talk about giving, because November is giving month. And this is the time in which we should be thinking about, how do we, what are we going to do to help organizations or help others? And certainly if we're not thinking about it, we're going to get a lot of emails and marketing from organizations who do want us to give and remind us of that. But how, there's obviously, unfortunately, bad guys taking advantage of it. Sinclair, what do you typically see, and what should businesses or individuals be cognizant of, during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 1 in 4 phishing campaigns in November are spoofed donations or payment platforms.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. So, looking at URLs, looking at email domains, really security awareness training. But just being aware of that, even as someone who's not an employee, just in your personal life, right? Making sure that you're authenticating what page you're clicking onto. And obviously, as nonprofits, there's a lot you could be doing and should be doing to prevent, your donors donating to inadequate or illegitimate websites. Um, I feel like this topic is just really important in general, and not even just about like funds, right? Most nonprofits are collecting PII from their donors as well. So not even for financial loss. If financial loss is minimal from somebody, donating to a spoofed email or whatever it might be, donor trust is going to drop significantly.
Okay.
So these are, just really important things to think about as you're approaching November and the giving season, where you're landing clients to make donations, all that good stuff.
That's an interesting point. I don't, I'll pay more attention, but I don't know of any nonprofits that actually use November as a time for security awareness. To just let their, tell their past donors, hey, be careful. This is a time where 1 out of 4 emails could be fraudulent. This is what we're doing to protect, your organization. I mean, your donations. If you'd like to give this, these are the safe ways in which that can be done. That'd be interesting for perhaps nonprofits to think about that a little more in terms of communication to their own members there.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to visit my mother, and she's very good about donating, but it does concern me, and I think somehow when you get of a certain age, you're meat to these bad guys. And her phone is just littered with texts from scam artists, and the emails the same way, and you just wonder, how many of them are actually even if it's only given $20 a month, you know, is it really going to who they think it's going to? It's scary, and it's you know, frightening for, you know, and makes you a little mad when you think about it. But hopefully, you know, and you know, hopefully the nonprofits are doing a good job, and hopefully we all can kind of keep aware. Then we'll have Black Friday coming up, and then there'll be all those scams, right?
Right, right. Well, and also, you know, you've got people on vacation, people are traveling, so your staff may be a little thin.
Right,
Which I think also plays into the problem as well.
right.
If I get an email for a free turkey, click here. I might click it. I love turkey, so it's the one scam that might get me.
Uh,
Maybe if I got an email for free spam, that might be. What would that be? Would that be a real spam, or is spam real anyway? I don't even know what.
And whatever.
I was at the. I did travel cross country once, and we we were driving along. I saw the billboard for the Spam Museum, so I had to go. And we unfortunately got there right as it was closing, but the gift shop was still open, so I did get a coffee cup. But and I'm not a big spam person, but just the concept of a spam museum. Although if and this is the spam that, you know, is edible. It wasn't the spam museum of a lot of emails, right? So there.
You know,
But,
my uncle's Hawaiian, and he cooks. They cook with a lot of spam. I didn't know that, obviously, until I met him, and it's really good what he cooks. I'm probably not spam out of what you picture.
yeah, I think it came out of the MREs, the canned meals that the military had during World War II. So it kind of evolved in that way. So you learn so many things during a podcast like this. This is why, you know, thousands of you are watching, and we really appreciate it. There. So well, we've taken up enough time. Again, really appreciate the insights, Kyle, Sinclair. And I wish everyone a good week, and be careful on what you click on. All right.
See you guys.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care. Yep. Bye-bye.